Hey everyone, welcome to the 5 Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an Everyman's Ale Trail. In this episode, I'll look at one of the newest hop varieties, finish up my interview with Tom Carpenter from Two Tom's Brewing in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and review MICRODOSING Strata by Blackstack Brewing. In this segment of Looking for Lupulin, I'm excited to examine a relative newcomer to the American hop scene, Strata. I've been doing a fair amount of research and reading lately on hops, not only the differences in the cultivars, but also in the development and breeding of new varieties. I am currently digging into a great book called The Book of Hops by Dan DeSorbo, which is a great resource for the novice or advanced hophead. In the book, there is a section on hop breeding. I'm clearly no geneticist, though I can find my way around a Venn diagram, but it was eye-opening to see what goes into coming up with a new hop variety. The process of coming up with such a variety can take as many as 12 years depending on the breeder. So that brings me to this New World American hop variety. First bred in 2009, Strata was developed through Oregon State University's hop breeding program. This happened through a partnership between Indie Hops and OSU. It was created through the open pollination of German Pearl, an Old World hop variety, at their experimental hop yard. Tens of thousands of seeds were collected to begin the OR9-1-331 hop program. During the 7-year testing and evaluation process, it was shortened to a designation of X331. 8 years later, in 2017, during the trial harvest, Indie Hops knew they had something that was going to be strata-spheric. With great expectation, in 2018 this hop finally came to market and has been a game changer for the brewing industry. It has great disease resistance, grows vigorously, and according to Jim Sahlberg at Indie Hops, it is consistently easy to care for, requires very little chemical input, and so brings a reduced environmental footprint and provides a strong yield. Strata is a great dual-use hop with an alpha acid content of 11 to 12.5%, and a beta acid content of 5 to 6%. Not surprisingly, there's a great deal of complexity that comes with this hop. Tropical fruit, cannabis, and citrus are the overarching themes that describe this variety. Kegerator.com goes further to say this about Strata. Passion fruit meets pot. It brings layered notes of tropical fruit including mango, passion fruit, melon, fresh berry/strawberry, and some citrus in the form of grapefruit. Along with this comes a dank herbal note of drifting cannabis. It also has less of the diesel caddy bite of other hops with the same funky dankness carry. If that doesn't make you want a beer right now brewed with Strata, please listen to the description one more time. Between 2020 and 2022, the Oregon crop harvest alone of Strata more than doubled, giving further credibility to its desirability and dual-use flexibility. At the moment, Strata is used mainly in IPAs, pale ales, and session IPAs because of the great aroma and flavor that it imparts. Know for sure that this hop was not bred to be typecast into IPAs. I predict in the coming years, more and more brewers will be experimenting using Strata hops in various styles, so keep your eye out because you know they will be delicious. Because this is such a new and complex hop variety, there are really no one-for-one substitutes as of yet for the home brewer, though I suppose hop tropical varieties such as Galaxy and Mosaic might be a possibility. In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, it's time for fermentation. If you're just listening in for the first time, in the previous episode, I pitched the yeast and waited with high expectation for something to happen in my fermenter. I didn't have to wait very long. Within minutes, I could see the yeast start to do its work as bubbles and foam started to gather on top of the wort. Having made my own pizza dough before, I knew this was a very good sign. My basement, where I plan to do my primary fermentation, is a tad bit cooler than the 65 to 70 degree Fahrenheit that the kit recommended. I made sure the yeast was still doing its work on my kitchen counter for 24 hours before I carefully transferred it downstairs. I checked it every day to make sure that the byproduct of brewing, the creation of carbon dioxide, was still occurring. I could see evidence of this in the airlock, where initially, every few seconds, there was a bubble making its way out of the fermenter. The expulsion of CO2 slowed after 3 or 4 days until there was almost no activity after a week. The instructions on the kit said it needed to stay in the fermenter for 14 days, so I actually left it there for only about 12 days before I brought it upstairs to a warmer temperature just to make sure the yeast feast was all done. At this point, I wasn't really sure whether I had beer or not, so I contacted Trevor at One Well, and he suggested I buy a hydrometer, which is really the only scientific way to know whether the yeast has done its job or not. When I poured a sample from the spigot and measured it, the final specific gravity read 1.05. I had alcohol. Since I didn't have the hydrometer measurement prior to this, I can only speculate that the ABV of this session IPA was somewhere in the 4 to 5% range, which is pretty typical for the style. If I were to do a back calculation, it's likely the initial specific gravity of my wort prior to fermentation was around 1.09. Well, hey, next time it's bottling day. Now it's time for Barstool Banter. This episode, I'm finishing up my chat with Tom Carpenter, owner and head brewer of Two Toms Brewing, with locations in Fort Wayne and Indianapolis, Indiana. Listen in as we talk about beer styles and find out what makes Two Toms beer special. You brew some really big and flavorful beers. What is your favorite part of the brewing process?
I think my favorite part is tasting something new for the first time from a brewing aspect. It goes from ideation, something that's in my head, and I can almost kind of taste it in my mind's eye. But then, the first time that you get to kind of contact fully carbonated, especially if it's sat in a barrel as well and stuff, and be able to kind of taste that. It's an exciting kind of time that you're kind of almost marrying that thought of what it could taste like to kind of what it actually tastes like. And when, it's really kind of close within that, it's kind of exciting from a creative standpoint. The other aspect I really like is watching people try things for the first time as well. Something that's new or exciting, and especially whether it be festivals or somebody's not sure, like at the tap room, it's something really unique and new, and watching them go back to their seat or go back to a friend or spouse and, hey, try this. This is oftentimes you see people do that head cock that they're like, oh, that's really good. That charges me up. I really enjoy seeing people get joy out of something that we produce.
What's your favorite style of beer, personally?
If I'm out and about, I'll usually always try an IPA that's on, and I usually prefer a bit more kind of West Coast leaning. You don't see it often, but if a brewery is known for farmhouse or saisons, that's my go-to. I could drink that, pretty much all day, especially if they're a bit more Brett to it or funky. I love that aspect of, what could be unique with a table beer or saison or farmhouse. That category, I think, never gets old to me, and it's always kind of unique within that. So those are my favorite that I kind of seek out. And if a brewery can do those well, that they're good at their craft.
Yeah, I love a good saison, to be honest. There's so many different slants you can take on it, whether you go with the funky or you go a little hoppier. Or
Yeah.
it's just a great style of beer to be able to play with. What is your least favorite style of beer to drink?
On the craft beer side, I don't know that there's a least favorite. I don't like domestics. I don't care for traditional amber ales or other things like that. I do love lagers or old world styles. I don't particularly care when something's too sweet. There's a lot of beers that I call like that are festival beers that are great, for a little sip, but sometimes they're too heavily fruited or too heavily sweet stout. That's too syrupy. I don't enjoy those quite as much. I respect the craft and creativity of it, but I much prefer something that I could, enjoy kind of a pint and sit back with it versus something that's just good for a 2-ounce taste.
And I think you do a really good job of that. I know that you do offer some sweet kind of beers, but I don't know that I've ever had anything that was like overly sweet that I wouldn't go back to again.
I think the biggest compliment most folks give us is that our beers are always balanced.
Mm-hmm.
I think balance lends itself to something that you could drink a whole pint of, even if it's a pastry stout or sour or other things. We don't go over that edge to where it's too much of a dessert. I think that allows you to enjoy kind of a full glass of something. Some people have a sweeter tooth and drink the other, but I like something that's a little bit overall kind of rounded and balanced and stuff. That's what we target as far as what the Two Toms brand is about.
Yep, and I can see that. Another series that I love that you do is your Other Tom series. Now, for those that don't know, Two Toms is really not Two Toms, so don't be disappointed in that. But this Other Tom series is awesome. How did that come about? Is that kind of a play on the fact that you had this silent partner?
Yeah, it kind of came about with that. Folks asking who's the other Tom, or there's some people out there claim that they know the second Tom or whatever too and stuff. So it's fun to kind of play with that. And I think it was an individual that had worked with me that kind of had suggested it early on when we're just the concept of the brewery as well. So with everybody asking who the other Tom, it was fun to kind of start a series of just other Toms that are out there, other kind of uses of the word Tom. So, everything from petty to Selleck to tomfoolery to we did,
Turkey.
yeah. In the Marvel world, we had
Yep,
a
Hiddleston.
Hiddleston
Yep.
versus Holland. So it's fun when then constantly get suggestions. Oh, have you thought of doing a Morello, or have you thought, I've wanted to do a Tommy Boy or something like that, some different things. So it makes it fun from that standpoint. So
Now, the only ones I've ever had from that series have been IPAs. Is it primarily an IPA series then?
it's been primarily kind of more New England style,
Mm-hmm.
hazy kind of IPAs kind of with it for the most part. Yep.
Just out of curiosity, do you have a favorite hop that you like to use with your IPAs?
It changes a bit, obviously, Citra is always a banger that we use quite
Yep.
a bit. I do love Nelson Sauvin hops,
A little bit of wine.
especially,
Yep.
kind of that white wine character.
Yep.
We use a lot of Amarillo just because it plays well with others.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hop that you see it sometimes, but when you blend it kind of with other hops, it kind of almost uplifts those other hops. It works really well with Citra, with Galaxy, with Simcoe. It just heightens some of those other things. We've also kind of experimented kind of with New World hops out of South Africa, or we use a lot of New Zealand hops. We use local hops kind of over in Columbia City. So we're always experimenting with different ones, but heavily use a lot of Citra, Amarillo. We use a lot of Columbus, Centennial sometimes. Obviously, Willamette in a lot of our stouts just because of the floral aspects. But
Mm-hmm.
it also depends on kind of what the beer style we're kind of going for as well.
Yeah.
Now that we've gotten into more traditional Czech lagers and others, you'll see a lot of noble hops, some Saaz, and other things like that incorporated too.
Yeah. Recently, I like Kolsch's, Czech Pilsners, like you said, those noble hops and that crispness that you get. There's just something about that. It's just so delicious.
Yeah, there's definitely been a nice resurgence with that. And we've always been known for kind of the outside the box, pushing the limits on things. But then I think we're also becoming known for, our traditional clean styles and stuff as well. I mean, we researched Czech Pilsner specifically and actually imported our side pour handle specifically, for that reason.
Okay.
We were the first within the area to kind of develop out kind of that style fully with that pouring style as well, and
Cool.
bring that to Fort Wayne. I give folks the chance to taste everything from a crisp pour to what they call a milk pour. You could get a mug that looks like it's all foam, but it's creamy tasting kind of lager, if you will. Gives you a completely different taste. You could try the exact same beer side by side with different types of pours, and one's going to be a bit more hoppier and crisp, and the other's going to be creamy, kind of milkier, just from a pouring style.
How do you get those big flavors in your beer? Because your beers are delicious. Let's just call it what it is.
We use really quality base grains for what we do. Not that other breweries don't, but we really look out for kind of things that are fresh and are going to drive kind of flavor. If you're looking at, what we do kind of on the pastry stout side and other things, or, sours and stuff, we actually take a culinary approach, so like our bananas Foster, we actually ripen bananas that get them to the stage where you would make banana bread out of them. 5 cases of those that go directly kind of into the beer with rum roasted pecans and other things like that. So a lot of those flavors are actually being imparted into the beer. But I think also it's just attentive to just the water balance, the grain balance, healthy yeast, and really kind of trying to push the envelope of those flavors of what we get out of the grain. you look at some of our base stouts or barrel-aged stouts, I mean, that large grain bill that we're producing and some of the caramel malts and specialty malts that we use are unique to that beer and expressive, as it kind of comes forward.
I think the other thing that you don't do is you don't use a lot of extracts or artificial flavors. I think you do your best to try to use, all natural ingredients, even fresh fruit. And I know it's expensive to do that,
Yep.
but I think that also gives you the best flavor characteristic in your craft as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that beats kind of the real fruit flavors or other things that kind of come through and stuff like that. And to use a bit of fruit purees that are real fruit along with, fruit juice concentrates or actual real juice, all of those things blend together and kind of pop within a beer as well.
Yeah. And you can tell the difference. I mean, you really can. So I think that's, again, part of where all those big flavors that you have come from, is just that attention to detail that way. Is there a beer out there that you've always wanted to try, but due to distribution or seasonal nature have never been able to get to?
As I started home brewing, I stopped chasing beer quite as much.
Okay.
I did get to try Lost Abbey's, their Duck Duck Goose.
Nice.
I was at FOBAB, and that actually won Best of Show. So,
great.
That was definitely one that was kind of on my list, just in kind of that style. I think certain ones from Cantillon that I'd still love to kind of try, and other things. So, and I just don't get enough of Jester King or Hill Farmstead just because of distribution. But I've been lucky enough to get my hands on bottles here and there. I wouldn't say that there's like a holy grail beer that I'd say that's out there that I haven't had. I've been very blessed with travels and other things to kind of visit a lot of locations. I'm sure there's plenty out there that love to kind of enjoy, but have really gotten out of kind of chasing these big whales and other things too. So.
Yeah. Now, I assume you've been to GABF as well?
We have not. We go to FOBAB just about every year. We started kind of 2019, I believe. So, that brings a lot of just barrel-aged beer and kind of notoriety of different breweries that are there. We've been to kind of, other big festivals, but never to GABF. It just, it's not that we couldn't, but just balancing busyness with the tap room, getting your beer out there. And I still work my regular job as well on top of everything. It's hard to kind of get out to those things, but it's definitely always on the list of something we'd like.
So you have another job beyond your two times job?
This is just honestly like a side hustle. I still have
kidding.
A regular corporate job. This is a small part of what I do as well.
I had no idea, Tom. I thought this was what you're doing full time.
Yeah, so I could use
cheers, dude. That's really awesome.
Toms at many different times, just working 2 full-time careers.
Wow. Well, you've got a great crew there in Fort Wayne. I mean,
we do.
The group there does a great job.
I am blessed at both taproom locations. So front of house, I do not manage much at all. So I have 2 excellent GM taproom managers that basically run the show. So, because of such, I'm not in the front of house quite as much. So like weekends or other things, sometimes I'm helping out, but I'm able to kind of go home and kind of more deal kind of with the behind the scenes things a little bit more. So.
Fantastic. Does sustainability feed into what you're doing there at Two Toms as well?
It does. I mean, we've looked at, just our chemical usage, driving efficiencies with the amount of grain we use. From day one, we've had a local farmer that picks up the grain, and so none of that's thrown away. It's fed to cattle locally. We reuse our sacks as much as possible, and those eventually do get kind of thrown away. But there's constantly things that we kind of look to try to improve or lessen kind of our footprint from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's a challenge, especially when you get to a scale that you guys. Well, I like to think of you as a fairly large scale brewery, but I mean, I guess you're really not. You're more of a
we're still on the we're
small to medium size.
Sometimes when you're large enough, then you have more things that you can do. You could, rather than feeding your grain, you could run a biodigester and do that. I've seen or talked to, I believe it's Bell's that actually takes, and they're able to take their bags, and they have somebody that recycles is able to kind of, compound those bags. So sometimes it's having the volume that allows you to scale to do some more things. So we're kind of right in between a lot of that.
Cool. Well, hey, before we wrap up, one last fun question for you. If you were a beer, what style would you be and why?
I think I'd probably go to my favorite kind of style, just in kind of, Saison. I've enjoyed traveling to many different places. And I think Saisons kind of take on a bit of the local terroir or whatever, with whether it be the hops or kind of fresh things within that. So I think, it'd be a style that basically would, continually kind of change depending on how seasons are, depending on agricultural aspects or where I happen to be kind of traveling. I mean, sometimes, we even have one now that's a farmhouse lager that has a wine influence to it as well. So I think that flexibility and kind of creativity of where things are, I think I'd be kind of in that realm. So
I love that. That's great. Well, hey, Tom, I really appreciate you spending time with me today, and just look forward to getting down there and getting schooled again. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. See you soon. Take
care.
Hey,
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking MICRODOSING Strata by Blackstack Brewing out of St. Paul, Minnesota. From the brewer, get your daily dose of this IPA that we dose daily, aka every day of primary fermentation, with our hand-selected strata from indie hops in Oregon to keep the juices flowing. Expand your horizons, open your mind, put this in your mouth. Without further delay, this beer comes in at 7.2% ABV and has an undisclosed IBU level. Well, as I pour this out into my Spiegel glass, it pours a hazy straw color. It has a nice fluffy white head. Super aromatic. Definitely getting a little bit of a tropical vibe on the nose. Maybe even specifically some mango or maybe even some passion fruit. So I'm going to go ahead and take a first sip here of this beer. This is a single hop strata beer, as you might expect. First sip impression here, it definitely has a grassy. I know that cannabis is the terminology that's used in the description of strata hops. It's definitely got that kind of a funky, kind of earthy herbaceousness to it. Certainly the nose here, as I mentioned, it's tropical. Definitely has some citrus. So second sip here impression, now that my palate has acclimated a little bit to that whole earthiness, it definitely gives me more of a tropical vibe. So I pick up notes of maybe some berry, definitely pick up some notes of citrus. It even kind of gives me on the front of the taste a little bit of spiciness to it, just a little bit of a zing as I'm drinking this. It finishes off with more of that earthiness, so it's got maybe something more along the lines of maybe bitter grapefruit peel, something like that. So I'm gonna give this a little bit of a swirl here. Yeah, so definitely if you're looking for a beer that's got some great tropical notes, something that's got some earthiness to it, a beer like this would be perfect for you. In fact, it's crazy. Every sip that I take, I keep picking up a little bit more. So maybe a little bit of melon, perhaps, in that last sip that I've had. It's a very good beer. Personally, I'm not as fond of that earthy cannabis dankness that Strata imparts, but it's a solid beer. It hits those notes of tropical fruit, citrus, a little bit of stone fruit, and very aromatic. Blackstack, this is a solid beer. I appreciate the fact that you are going after the single hop that is a fairly new American hop. And I give this one 3.5 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Blackstack. If you've got a beer you'd like me to drink and describe, leave a comment below. If you're a brewer and have one in mind, direct message me on Instagram and let's see what we can do. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I document my winter journey south and continue my homebrewing adventure. I'll resume regular interview segments next month. Remember to hit the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes. I'd love to hear from you, so please follow me on Instagram, 5beerplan2022, and leave a comment to let me know what your favorite beer with Strata hops is. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.